So, Preston, we are back for the end of the year, best shows and worst shows. And I have to say, I was thinking back on it now, and even you said this before we started recording. There's a lot of shows that came out. Like, you kept asking me, like, did this come out? Did this come out? Like, even other people kept asking me, like, wait a minute, that was this year? Like, yeah. Everybody and their mothers came out to play this year with, like, their top shows. Like, even, like...
I think it had to do with, COVID delay or something. Like, they're like, finally, we're going to release stuff. Finally, we're gonna start filming stuff and releasing stuff. You think that was it? That just everything came out in 2022?
It's just 2022 just did not fuck around with shows. Like, every streaming service's, like, flagship shows in, like, the past 5 years came out. Stranger Things on Netflix... Handmaid's Tale for Hulu, The Boys for Amazon, Game of Thrones came back with the prequel for HBO, Star Trek, of course, at NBC. Everybody, all the flagship networks and streaming services had their flagship franchise series come out to play. And, no, I don't think we're ever going to get another year like this, where it was just so packed with, like, powerhouse shows. Some good, some bad, so... let's talk.
That is true.
Do you want to talk about the worst or the best of this year?
I mean, so I didn't do a list of our worst. Maybe we should, but there were some real stinkers. I think the stinker that we couldn't even finish because it was so bad was Picard.
I finished Picard actually.
Oh god.
Let me get my list here. So do you mind if I go into, like, my bad shows of 2022?
Sure. Let's hear your bad shows.
So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's really okay. So bad shows. All right, number 5, really bad show. Westworld.
That was
final season wasn't that bad as the other ones on this list, but it was still just not that great compared to what came before. And the criticism I gave it is that Westworld season 4 is like that one guy at a party who says that one joke and everyone laughs, and he just keeps saying the same joke to try to get everyone to laugh again, even though he has no material.
Yeah, I mean there were a few episodes in the middle that were okay. I don't think I would put it on my, like, worst list if I were to create one, but there were a few episodes in the middle that were okay, but it started out super boring and it ended really weak and convoluted, and it lost any of the luster that season 1 had. I think the worst criticism you can give to Westworld is that it was boring. It was just boring. Like, I felt like it was a chore to get through an episode, and that's not a good thing to have with a show, is to feel like it's a chore.
That's why it's my number 5.
Westworld was supposed to be fun. Yeah. All right. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is once again slightly worse. Now that you said that, okay. Number 4 is Kenobi, because Kenobi just felt like a mess of. Like, let's be honest here. What Kenobi really should have been was Old Man Logan. The Logan movie from a couple years ago that was, like, supposed to be the nail in the coffin for,
Sure.
the Legacy Fox X-Men stuff. Kenobi just felt messy. It went on a little too long than necessary. There were great scenes, but a lot of the characters I just didn't really care about that much. It's just... It felt like a fanfic.
It did feel like a fanfic. I think my worst criticism that I give to Kenobi is that it's forgettable.
Yes.
Like, I forgot what happened in the show. The things I kind of remember is that the few scenes that had Jimmy Smits in, where I was like, whoa, this is what a real actor is like, you know? and I was really impressed when, like, I think there was a scene with, like, Jimmy Smits and Ian McGregor, and I was like, whoa, 2 actors acting. This is really nice. And the rest of the show was just largely forgettable. Mm-hmm. I think they're in a cave at some point. You know, like, that's kind of what I remember. I don't know. It had nothing that really stuck in my mind. There was nothing, you know, the whole, like, we're going to cart out Darth Vader and cause you to cream your pants effect, like, just doesn't work anymore. So I don't know. Yeah, there was just nothing. There was nothing to it. There was no there. You know, there was no
That
there
episode
there.
at the ocean base was like very pointless, and you could have skipped it altogether. It just didn't make any.
Yeah,
It's kind of
true.
dumb.
Yeah. Okay. Number three.
My number 3, Book of Boba Fett. Once again, you get all these legacy characters. You bring them out. You take them off the shelf, and you do nothing with them. Once again, like, why the hell is Boba Fett a crime lord when he doesn't do any crime?
Yeah. Why is he a bounty? He's a bounty hunter, and he doesn't collect any bounties. That's it's not what we liked Boba Fett for. Boba Fett, is a villain, a mysterious villain who does ruthless things, and he didn't do any of those things. We had no mysterious villain. He didn't do anything ruthless. There was a lot of crammed in items that seemed like they were trying to sell toys. The plot just didn't make sense. It was a lot of wasted potential. Like considering what they could have done. I mean, had they had the whole season hanging out with the Tusken Raiders, that would have been awesome. Had they had a whole season of him trying to like escape from the Sarlacc pit, but each of those things, they like would come out with this good idea and then just fumble the ball every single time. And it was just not a cohesive story in the end. It was a big mess in retrospect. Yeah.
Just wasn't a fan of it.
Fett.
Wasn't a fan of it. It didn't even know what it wanted to be. Some of the times, it almost felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen, just meddling with what the story should be, what the characters should be. Not to mention, the best part of the show does not even involve the titular character of the show, because the best part is the Mando stuff.
Yeah, a completely different show, like crammed in there. Yeah,
so
crazy.
That's number 3. Number 2 is Star Trek Picard Season 2. That was a mess of a show. It was boring. I just don't care. And quite frankly, I think Season 2 really fucks with the legacy of the character, because I watched an episode of TNG a while ago, and I'm like, this is a completely different character. Like, going back and forth. Red Letter Media is not kidding when they say Picard is really bad for the character, because it feels like a completely different person. And
right. I mean, I think you can approach Star Trek in two ways. You can either have interesting Alien of the Week sci-fi, just stories about the nature of humanity and exploring these different things, where you go to a planet and you learn more about the alien race is a reflection of today, and you explore these issues, or you've invented a world and you have fun, like having the characters play around in this world that you've created. They failed on both levels with like what makes Star Trek fun. Like they didn't explore any interesting themes, and when they did take these characters that we thought would be fun to interact, they just botched it.
Yeah.
Having them act completely differently than they should be acting, just having no logic from one scene to another on what people are doing. Like what is Q even doing? It just doesn't. Can you explain Q's motivation? No one can explain Q's motivation.
Well, that's the purpose of the character, is that he has this grand vision that we're too dumb to understand, because he's an immortal, godlike being. But even so, bringing Q out for one last hurrah and it being just kind of okay. Like, everything Q did was so incredibly unnecessary, because we already solved like the whole Q Picard dynamic at the end of TNG. Like, you didn't have to revisit this. For like that I will say that final moment at the end of season 2 where they hug it out and, Q's about to go for the last time. Very nice, very tender moment. But at the same time, you didn't need...
It's for the the thing is, that makes sense to the audience, but it doesn't really make sense to the characters.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we're the audience saying goodbye to Q, and so we're sniffling. But like, it doesn't make sense to those characters. Oh well.
If anything, it ruins
what a mess. I can't... Yeah, the legacy of everything. Mm-hmm. And they get so much lore wrong. So much lore obviously wrong. Where it's just like...
The Guinan stuff.
The Guinan stuff, like, everyone's seen Time's Arrow. Like, you can't just, like, throw Guinan on Earth and not address, like, the fucking Mark Twain episode of... Anyway, now you're just making me angry. I'm surprised Picard is number 2. What could possibly be worse? than Picard.
What my number one pick of the worst show of 2022, it may not have any resonance to you because you probably didn't play this video game growing up, but Halo, it was a huge part of my childhood. It's still now. And I think Halo is the perfect example of what's happening with adaptations in the last 5 years. It's just people who are given a job and they don't care. And this is something I say to Witcher as well.
But video game adaptations rarely are ever any good.
True. That's because no one ever sticks to the fucking source material. You know what's the best video game adaptation ever of all time is? Mortal Kombat, the first one from 94 or 95.
Yeah, it was a fun movie. As cheesy as it was, it's a fun movie.
It's just the game. It's just the tournament.
It is just the game.
That's
You're
it.
Right. It's about as shallow as the game is, and that works. That's the advantage of the movie.
But you know what's funny about that is that we've never really had, to my knowledge, a video game television adaptation. It's always been movies, and you can't really adapt a story of a game in like 1 hour and 30-minute movie. Here they had
there was a Mortal Kombat series for a while, but it doesn't really count.
We don't talk about that one. They didn't adapt anything. They just kind of did their own thing. They just took the characters and did their own thing, which is kind of what they did with Halo here. Everything that made Halo is just not in here. For example,
Gotcha.
Master Chief is basically Mando. You know how Mando never takes off the helmet or the armor? Mm-hmm. Master Chief is always taking off his fucking helmet. No, that's the first red flag right there. And like I was saying earlier, it's just you have people who are not fans of the source material coming in to just do this thing, and they're just doing a job. And this harkens back to what Dave and Dan did. Dave and Dan, I believe, brought Ice and Fire to HBO. And they're like, we got to adapt this. This is going to be great. They were fans of the source material. It's a shame what happened in the last couple of seasons, but they were fans of the source material. They spoke to George R. R. Martin, and you saw like the love they have for the show in the first several seasons. Here, same with Witcher, it's just people doing a job. They were given this thing to adapt, and they thought they could make it better by including their own things and doing things differently. And it didn't work out. Halo is bad if you're a fan of Halo and you watch the show. There are obviously every adaptation has that one good thing about it. I can't find one good thing about Halo. Witcher, there are things that are great about it. Some of the casting was good.
So you're saying the Halo series is as different from the video game as the Super Mario Brothers movie is from the Super Mario Brothers video game?
Yes, 110%. Oh my god, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always think it's very funny when adaptations are very different, because I kind of view it like covering a song. You can either like do the like tribute band where you're trying to be faithful and replay that song like they would, or you're going to take a new spin on it, but that spin better be good. You better do a cover, and that cover better add something and be interesting and like be better. You don't cover a song if you're going to butcher it, that's the thing of these adaptations. Like you're hoping to pull people in with the IP, but unless it's either really, really good, which it wasn't going to be, or it's faithful, people are going to hate it. So you got to hit one of the two.
Mm-hmm. What it comes down to, and it's the same thing with The Witcher and the same thing with Rings of Power. Well, maybe not Rings of Power, but definitely with Halo. It's people who had their own ideas for their own shows, but they weren't trusted enough with the budget to make their own IPs, their own shows, but they were given this, and they're like, you know what? I can input some of my own ideas and show the networks why they would have worked in the first place. It doesn't work. So Halo is my pick for the worst show of 2022, simply because it's nothing like the source material. Everything they tried to doing differently in going their own direction was bad, and just the characters don't make any sense. It's just, the story was awful. Just no. Halo is my pick for the worst show. What, do you have one? Like a worst show you could think of that you did not like?
I mean, if I'm picking it off the top of my head, I would say it would be Picard. Just because it was so bad, I just couldn't even finish it. I'm trying to think of another one where I started watching it. I'm just like, no, this is no good. But
any show that you started watching that you thought that we most likely did not cover. So
Yeah, I mean, I watched some like pretty bad, like trashy Netflix shows with my wife.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not sure if those really count. Like, I didn't think, like, I watched Bling Empire at season 2. That was really
What
bad.
the hell's that? Blink? I've never heard of that before.
It's supposed to follow around these like really rich Asian Americans, but it's like half fake. You know how they're like creating conflicts that like are fault, like don't exist, and there wasn't really an arc for the season like there was for the first season and things like that. Like, so like even if the stories are fake or semi fake, like they couldn't even like cohesively put them together into any sort of story. I'm trying to think of anything else.
Oh,
that
wait,
was just,
so
like, super bad.
So what? Because it's funny you say that because the first season,
It's like a reality show, yeah.
well, the first season got a 90% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So the first season's supposed to be very good.
Bling Empire season 1 had some interesting moments. It had some interesting moments, and then season 2 is just like they didn't know what to do with these people. So they were just like inventing stuff. Like, there were 2 characters that were like pretending to be in a relationship or try to start a relationship, and it was very clear that the two characters weren't really into each other. So it's just like manufactured stuff. Like, this one dude wants to date another woman, and she's like, "Well, I have trust issues, so you need to take a polygraph test." And you're like, "What? They haven't even been on like a date. Like, no one would do that." And then they take the polygraph, like, just like invented stuff. Like, no, that would never happen. Like, just stop. So they have this whole episode of them going to take a polygraph test together, and it's just like, come on. It's just stupid stuff. But well, like, first season there was some like real stuff on there. There was a woman who like was dating this guy forever and had a kid with him, and like was waiting for him to propose, and then at the end she proposes to him because he just won't propose, and he says yes, and it like felt like I think it was a real story, and it felt like a real story. So I don't know, just lame stuff like that. So I'm trying to think of just like absolute worst trash where I can't think of anything like really bad other than Picard, where I'm just like, oh my god. Because I guess if it were bad, I would just stop watching, But like, Picard, you feel obligated.
I'm one of those assholes where, and this is how I was with Jessica Jones season 2, which I thought was absolutely awful. My mentality is I'll continue on because it can't get any worse. Hopefully, like, it just goes like there has to be a point where it just like gets better. And it never does. Nothing ever does when it comes to shows like these. It always just goes downhill even further, which is insane. But I'm sure, like, you'll probably think of something like the moment we stop recording, and we'll talk about it.
Yes,
we'll talk about it in the stream.
There was another show, and I don't even want to say it was that bad. I watched. There's this one comedy sci-fi show on HBO called, I think, Avenue 6, and I watched the second season for that. Avenue 5, I'm sorry, and like it didn't have the same magic as the first season, which was okay, but it wasn't horrible. It just wasn't horrible writing, but it just wasn't the same. I don't know, stuff that like just wouldn't make my list of like being great. It's like what Ms. Marvel was this year. I wouldn't say it was bad, but like like it wouldn't make my top 10 list of good shows. Like, it was just very convoluted and all over the place. That's about it.